Rain clung to the edges of the canopy as the coffin began to sink. Drums that had been steady and respectful all morning broke into a sudden, sharp rattle, like pebbles against iron. The crowd hushed. On the third shovel of red Georgia clay, a voice cut through the silence. "She cannot sleep in that house tonight." Heads turned. The voice belonged to Colonel Adeoye, David's older brother, a tall man in a charcoal agbada, the gold embroidery catching every bit of gray light. He did not shout. He did not need to. The sentence was heavy enough to tilt the ground. The widow, Amara Johnson, stood stiff beside the grave as if her bones had been poured into her black dress. The dress was simple, knee-length, sleeves to the elbow, the kind of clean line David loved. Her hair, thick and natural, brushed into a low bun, was damp at the edges from the misting rain. She did not blink when she heard Colonel's words. She looked at the coffin, at the nameplate, David Chukwuma Johnson, and let her right hand close around the cool, smooth beads at her wrist. In the circle of umbrellas, Auntie Tola's mouth tightened. "It is tradition," she murmured to the cluster of cousins and women in ghillie head wraps. "The family decides after burial. This is not new. Tradition." A younger cousin in a fitted black suit and a pair of Air Force Ones lifted his eyebrows. "In Atlanta?" "Tradition," Auntie Tola repeated, and her eyes slid sideways to the white two-story house at the end of the cul-de-sac. The house David had closed on 3 years earlier, the one with the blue hydrangeas Amara watered every Saturday morning. By the time the last prayer settled and the drummers softened to a heartbeat rhythm, a quiet storm had already moved from the cemetery to the driveway. People followed the solemn line of cars to the repast, balanced plates of jollof and fried chicken, and spoke in the half-whisper of grief. But near the garage, voices grew louder, spilling like oil onto the concrete. "She's still in shock," said Kendra, Amara's best friend, placing a hand on Amara's shoulder as they stepped into the foyer. "You don't have to talk to anyone. Drink water. Sit down." Amara nodded because nodding was easier than explaining how grief had hollowed her chest into an echoing room. She moved like she was listening for David to call from the kitchen, the way he had always called, "Amara, come taste this. I think I finally got my grandmother's pepper soup right." But the kitchen was just a room now, full of quiet plates. It began with a slam. The garage door thudded up, rattling like loose teeth. Then came the first insult to the day. A suitcase arced through the air and skidded across the garage floor. A second bag followed, then a third. Amara's navy roller, her black tote with the leather handle, the small carry-on with a broken zipper she kept meaning to replace. Voices rose and cracked into argument, while the house hummed with people trying to pretend it wasn't happening. "What are you doing?" Kendra was already moving, her heels clicking as she cut through the crowd. Colonel stood with two of the cousins by the garage, sleeves rolled to the elbow now. In his hand was a set of keys Amara had seen on David's dresser 100 times. Keys to the study, the safe, the back gate. He pointed with them like they were a scepter. "Her things go to the garage," he said, "until we finish family decisions." "You don't get to make that call," Kendra said. "Not today." "It is made," Auntie Tola replied, appearing beside him as if she had been there all along. Her ghillie was royal blue, a crown above eyes that missed nothing. "We will sit with elders tonight. We will talk bride price, land accounts. Let there be order." Amara stepped into the doorway, more shadow than person, but her voice had iron in it. "Stop throwing my bags." The cousins hesitated. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the slow drip from the garage roof onto the concrete. One of them, Marcus, the one in the Air Force Ones, shifted his weight and looked away. "David would not want this," Amara said. Colonel's gaze held hers. "David is gone," he answered. Heads turned again the way they had at the graveside. And in the space between the words, a small, practical disaster unfolded. The black tote thumped against the wall and toppled a metal shelf. A crate of old paint cans clanged open. One split and drizzled a line of pearl gray across the floor like a careless signature. Kendra clasped Amara's hand. "We'll pick them up," she said softly. "We'll put them in the guest room and anyone who tries to move them will answer to me." But the men kept going because grief sometimes comes dressed as authority. On the far side of the garage, pushed behind a bike with a flat tire and the boxed-up air fryer David bought on a discount he was proud of, sat a plain brown envelope with a red seam. It lay inside the front pocket of the navy roller bag, the one that had slid into a slick of spilled paint. The envelope had no label, only the heavy weight of something important and the faint impression of a notary seal that had pressed too hard through the paper. Hours earlier, before the last hospital call and the cruel order of the morning, Amara had tucked that envelope where she thought no one would look. David had placed it in her hands 2 nights before he died, his palm burning with fever. He had not said many words because pain had taken them, but he had said these with a clarity that carved them into air. "Hold this, my love," he whispered. "If I don't wake, this is what keeps you safe. This is what keeps them away." At the time, she had thought it was a deed to the house or a letter to the bank. She had not asked more. His breath had been short, she had not wanted to use it on legal names. Now the roller bag absorbed the paint along the seam. It wasn't enough to soak through, but it traced the outline of the pocket, framing the shape of the envelope like a map. "Leave it," Connell said when Kendra stooped to rescue the bag. "We will inventory everything." "Inventory?" Kendra's laugh was a sharp, humorless sound. "You think this is a warehouse?" The garage smelled of wet cement and slow rust. Overhead, the fluorescent light flickered and then held steady. The driver of the rented van, they had hired him to help with chairs and coolers, hovered near the door, unsure. He kept glancing toward the street, toward the cul-de-sac where kids on bikes were pausing to stare. Amara looked past everyone. Something in the shape of the roller bag pulled at her, a thread her mind couldn't yet name. She took one step forward and then another. "Ma'am," said the van driver, voice low. "You want I should move these inside for you?" "She is not touching anything," Auntie Tola snapped. "She is," Kendra countered, and then to Amara gently, "Pick up what matters." What mattered? The phrase landed and rang with a small bell of memory. David's palm hot as the inside of a mug. "Hold this. Keeps you safe." The room narrowed until it was only the bag in her hand reaching for it. She knelt and tugged at the handle, but the roller wheel had jammed under the shelf and paint made the floor slick. She slid, caught herself on her palm, and stood again, leaving a gray print on the dress she would never wear again. Connell moved closer. "You should rest," he said, and though the words were soft, the arm he extended was an arm to move her back. She straightened. "I said," Amara replied, "stop throwing my bags." For the first time since the cemetery, something like uncertainty passed over his face. Grief too, if anyone had been looking for it. But the cousins, needing leadership, needing a shape to their anger, watched his eyes, not his mouth. From the kitchen, a cry went up. Someone had started serving plantains and the women insisted the children eat first. The normal sounds of a repast tried to push their way into the garage, the clatter of serving spoons, a laugh too loud and then immediately swallowed, but the garage held its own weather. A second sound lifted under the first, thin and insistent. A phone vibrating against metal. It came from inside the navy bag. Kendra heard it. Amara heard it. Marcus heard it and pretended he didn't. "It's mine," Amara said and kneeled again, fingers sliding across the paint-slick zipper. It gave with a small sigh. Her hand went into the front pocket and brushed paper with the thickness of fate. She drew the envelope halfway into view. The notary seal flashed under the fluorescent light, an embossed circle with an eagle and the words Bayview Mineral Rights, Transfer and Sale. Beneath it, in David's careful engineer's handwriting, a date only 4 weeks old. And the number, $500 million. Kendra's breath left her. "Amara?" "No one touches that," Connell said. It was no longer a request. The van driver took a step back. Even Marcus, who had performed bravery all afternoon, forgot how to look indifferent. Amara held the envelope with both hands, the way people hold babies and holy books. The garage felt suddenly small, as if air itself were a limited thing. Kendra moved to stand beside her, shoulders squared. "What is it?" Auntie Tola demanded. "It's David's," Amara said, and the words surprised her because of the way they steadied her feet. "And it is mine to keep safe." Another sound rose, this one from the driveway. Tires on wet asphalt. A black SUV eased to a stop at the curb, windows dark. The back door opened before the engine fully died, and a man stepped out in a raincoat that cost more than the van. He did not look at the food tables or the cluster of neighbors at the sidewalk. He looked straight at the open garage. "Mrs. Johnson?" he called, voice smooth as courtrooms. "My name is Attorney Blake Hendricks. I represent Bayview Holdings. I believe you have something that belongs to our client." Every conversation in the house seemed to pause and tilt toward the garage. Kendra whispered, "Who called him?" Connell's jaw tightened. He did not answer. The attorney lifted a leather folder like a priest lifting a Bible. "I have instructions. If the original transfer package is found, Bayview is prepared to complete the final authentication today." "Today," Kendra said. "Today," Hendricks repeated, and then with a glance at the envelope in Amara's hands added, "Before anyone else makes a mistake. Before anyone else makes a mistake." Thunder rolled, distant and patient. The fluorescent light buzzed, and somewhere beneath the shelf, a slow electric spark kissed a strip of exposed wire near the paint. It was tiny, a moth's wing of light. No one saw it. What they saw was Marcus's eyes flick to the envelope and back to Cunnel. What they saw was Cunnel reach forward, palm open, and say quietly, almost kindly, "Sister, give me that paper." Amara looked from his hand to the attorney to the bag that had hidden a fortune and back to the family she had married into. Her thumb pressed against the red seam of the envelope. The garage door, still half open, began to shudder on its track as the rain thickened outside, and a thin thread of smoke, so thin it could have been sorrow, rose from the paint spill by her feet. The attorney's name hung in the damp air like a final notice. Hendricks waited just outside the spill of light from the garage, careful not to step onto the paint-slick floor. Behind him, rain stitched a tight curtain across the driveway. Beyond that, neighbors watched with the fascinated pity people save for other people's storms. "Mrs. Johnson," he said again, quieter. "May I approach?" No one moved. Cunnel's hand hovered between them, palm open, patient as a trap. Kendra shifted her body to block him without touching, chin tilted like a small shield. Amara tightened her grip on the envelope. The paper felt heavier than it should, as if the numbers printed there had gained physical weight. Her eyes drifted to the red seam, to the impression of the notary seal. Bayview Mineral Rights, Transfer and Sale. For words that sounded like a foreign language yesterday and today like a life raft. "Let him talk," she said finally. Hendricks stepped forward 2 careful paces, legal folder tucked under his arm. Up close he smelled like rain and cologne and the inside of new cars. He did not look at Cunnel. He looked only at Amara and at the document that had turned a grieving afternoon into a trial. "That envelope," he said, "should contain the executed assignment of rights, the escrow confirmation, and the surveyor's map. If it's the original package, there will be a blue tamper strip inside. Do you see it?" Cunnel's jaw flexed. "This is family business." "And corporate," Hendricks replied evenly, "because Bayview has held funds in contingency pending authentication. If the counterparty of record is deceased, then the spouse named on the escrow addendum is the person I need to speak to, provided certain conditions." Kendra's eyes cut to Amara. "Spouse? Named?" "David didn't," Auntie Tola began, but Hendricks raised a hand with a politeness that felt like the edge of a knife. "Bayview is not here to argue culture," he said. "We adhere to contracts." The word contracts pulled a memory from the fog. 2 months earlier. A Sunday afternoon. David at the dining table with a yellow legal pad, lines of numbers like rows of corn. He had smiled at her with the tired pride of a man nursing a good secret. "Just trust me a little longer," he'd said. "God willing, I'm putting a wall between you and anybody who ever thinks they can push you." Now Cunnel's voice found the room again. "If you think you will walk into this house and remove papers, you are mistaken." "This is my home," Amara said, the sentence arriving in her mouth before she knew she'd say it. "And this is my husband's funeral day. You will not command me." It wasn't loud, but it was final. Hendricks blinked once, almost like a bow. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, "if the surveyor's map is present, we need to confirm watermarks. If it's not, we need to—" A thin thread of smoke lifted from the paint spill and curled like a question mark. "Smell that?" Marcus muttered. He looked down. The spark had found a companion, a hair-thin line of flame chasing the river of paint toward a cardboard box. The fluorescent light buzzed in alarm. Kendra saw it at the same time. "Whoa. Don't panic," the van driver said, already patting the wall for an extinguisher, finding none, then lunging for the garden hose coiled by the door. He yanked. It held fast, nodded to itself. "Step back," Hendricks warned, his calm finally cracking. They didn't. Grief doesn't step back. Money doesn't either. "Give it to me," Cunnel said and reached for the envelope. "Don't touch her," Kendra snapped, her shoulders slamming gently into his forearm, a soft collision that said everything. Amara clutched the package and stumbled a half-step, the paint slick under her heel. The envelope tilted, the red seam scraped her palm. Smoke thickened into the kind of smell that wakes sleeping children. Somewhere inside, a smoke alarm hiccuped into life, then another across the hall, a cascade of mechanical birds. "Water," the van driver grunted, wrenching the hose free, sloshing a first useless arc onto the floor that pushed the flame sideways, licking at a stack of flattened moving boxes labeled in David's block print. "Taxes/photos/college. Not water, it's oil-based." Marcus blurted, surprising himself by remembering some half-watched YouTube video. "Baking soda, sand, something." "Get the sand from the hydrangeas," Kendra shouted, and the van driver sprinted into the rain like a man grateful for simple instructions. Hendrik stepped back to the lip of the garage, turning his folder into a shield against stray droplets, eyes never leaving the document in Amara's hands. He had the look of a man who had learned to stand still while chaos burned around him. "Amara," he said, using her first name for the first time, quiet and surgical. "If that envelope is compromised before I authenticate it, a very large door could close." "How large?" she asked, and the question felt absurd in her mouth, like asking about room size while a ceiling fell. "A door with 500 million reasons to stay open," he said. 500 million. The number had a sound. It was a heavy coin dropping into a deeper well. People would dive after it and forget to swim back. Connell saw the calculation flicker in her eyes and pressed his advantage. "It is safer with me," he insisted. "They will trick you. They will try to put you under signature and take everything with small print." Hendricks didn't look at him, but his lips thinned. "Our counsel prefers to speak without random interruptions." "Random?" Auntie Tola bristled, stepping forward with the imperious geometry of her geli. "I am elder here. She is a wife because we allowed the marriage. Do you hear me? Allowed. Allowed." The word landed with an old, ugly echo. It found another memory older than Atlanta. ABA Market, a little stall where Amara and her mother bought fabric. An auntie's voice telling a story about how a bride can be welcomed with both hands and still be measured like a tablecloth. The moral had been simple: know your own measurements. Do not let someone else sew your life too small. A vibration tickled her fingers. Her phone still in the tote. The same thin, insistent buzz that had led her to the envelope. Kendra heard it too. "Answer it," Kendra said. "On speaker." "In a fire?" Marcus said, half laughing because everything was ridiculous now. The hose thumped back against the van driver's leg as he rushed in with a pail of damp sand scooped from the hydrangea bed. He threw it onto the creeping flame. It hissed and sulked and retreated a fraction. "Go," the driver panted. "More." "I've got it," Marcus said, and bolted into the rain with a speed that had nothing to do with courage and everything to do with needing a task. Amara slid the envelope into the inner fold of her dress and reached into the tote's front pocket. Her phone came up wet with paint and blinking with a voicemail notification. The number was David's. Not the main one. The old one he kept for work when he didn't want to be disturbed, the one she had forgotten was even in her contacts. She tapped play and set it on the shelf, speaker on, sound thin under the smoke. David's voice filled the garage, a little rough, like sand through a sieve. The date stamp landed like a gavel, 3 days before he died. "If she is hearing this," he said, "then I didn't make it." Kendra's hand flew to her mouth. Auntie Tola's lips pressed into a single line. Connell's eyes shuddered like windows against a storm. "Amara," the voice went on softer. "I put the Bayview package in your navy roller. Not the main pocket. The front, where you keep your travel-size lotion you never use." She felt the absurd heat of being known and almost cried. "Listen," the recording said, voice sharpening. "If anyone throws your bags into the garage, it means they've already decided you're a visitor in your own house. If that happens, you must not give the envelope to anyone. Not my brother. Not my aunties. Not the man from Bayview unless he says the code." Hendrik straightened. "What code?" he asked the room as if the recording could answer him. "Blue map," David's voice said, as if eavesdropping from a better place. "He should say there's a blue map, that the surveyor hid a symbol in the watermarks. If he doesn't mention the map, he's not the one. And Amara." Static frayed the edges of his words. The smoke alarm found its full voice and shrieked. The small flame, offended by sand, made a jump to a scrap of oily rag and flared. "Hid one more proof," the message pushed through. "If they corner you, go to the hydrangeas. The blue ones. Dig under the third stone. That's where." The message died, chopped off by its own recording limit. The phone blinked back to the home screen like a child who had told a secret and gone to hide. Kendra and Amara looked together at the hydrangeas visible through the rain. Blue blooms shivering, a little altar at the edge of the driveway. They looked back at the sand-streaked paint, at the smoldering rag, at the envelope pressed against Amara's ribs. "The map," Hendrik said, steady now. "Mrs. Johnson, I did mention the map before the recording. And there is a symbol. It's a waterline sigil the surveyor uses, an anchor." He lifted his folder a half-inch as if to swear on it. "If the map is present, you and I can finish what your husband started." Connell took a single slow step closer, not threatening, almost tender. "Sister," he said, soft in a way that made the hair on Kendra's arms rise. "Let us go inside. We will find the truth together." This fire, this drama, this is not our way. Funny, Kendra said, how your way started with throwing her life into a garage. The van driver returned with another pail. He poured. The flames spit and died, leaving a smear of dirty foam and the memory of heat. The smoke alarm calmed from a scream to a sulk, then gulped back into silence. For a moment, everyone simply breathed. Show me the blue map, Hendricks said gently to Amara. Please. She slid the envelope free again. Her hands moved quickly now, with the clarity of a person following instructions from the dead. The red seam split cleanly under her thumb. Inside, a sheaf of papers lay neat and precise, David's handwriting peeking through in addenda and initials. She lifted the first page, assignment of rights with her name in the spouse line, crisp as a new dollar. The second, escrow confirmation with a bank stamp she recognized. The third. Her breath stalled. The third was not a map. It was a church program. The funeral program. David Amara Johnson, sunrise, sunset. A smudge of gray paint streaked the corner. Kendra leaned in. No, no, no. Hendricks's face didn't change, but something in his shoulders did. A small sag like a tent losing its center pole. There should be a folded vellum with a watermark, he said, too calm. Check again. She did. The envelope gave up receipts, a dry cleaning ticket, a photocopy of a will cover page, even a sticky note with a grocery list David had written in those last good days, eggs, suya spice, oranges, but no map. No blue tamper strip. No anchor sigil. Where is it? She whispered. No one answered. The rain answered for them, drumming harder on the driveway. A car turned at the end of the cul-de-sac. Brake lights washed the garage in a temporary red. Marcus jogged back in with another pail of sand, triumphant and wet. We good. Kendra took it by reflex and set it down with a thud. Amara's hands shook. She looked at the envelope's empty mouth and then at the tote's open pocket. Something in her body knew before her mind did. She had had the map. She had had it. She had set the envelope down for a moment when she reached for the phone. Between that breath and this one, the garage had filled with heat and motion and a dozen hands. Amara lifted her eyes. Cunnell stood exactly where he had been. Auntie Tola's hands were folded in pious disbelief. Hendricks was a perfect line of concern. Marcus was shaking water from his sleeves. The van driver stared at the floor like it might confess. Somebody took it, Kendra said, voice low and dangerous. Mind your words, Auntie Tola snapped. Mind your hands, Kendra shot back. Amara didn't speak. She simply looked past all of them, out to the rain and the hydrangeas and the third stone David had named. The blooms bobbed like heads in a congregation. The third stone looked like any other stone. She took one step toward the driveway. Where are you going? Cunnell asked. To do what my husband told me, she said. Thunder rolled again, closer now. Hendricks tucked his folder under his coat and moved to follow. Cunnell moved too, and for the first time, their shoulders touched, corporate and kin colliding. Amara reached the edge of the porch and the rain hit her face like a blessing and a warning. She bent to lift the third stone. Underneath lay a small metal box the size of a book, the kind you might keep recipes in. Rust had rimmed the edges, but the latch was new. She snapped it open. Inside was a folded piece of vellum the color of old bones, stamped with the pale watermark of an anchor. And beneath it, tucked like a secret within a secret, lay a flash drive marked in David's hand. If they come for you. Amara looked up, astonished, relief breaking across her face like dawn. And then the house lights cut out, the entire street falling into a sudden black, as a second black SUV slid to the curb and a man in a gray suit stepped out and said, in a voice that left no room for misunderstanding, Atlanta PD. Everyone inside. Now. The rain hissed against the black SUVs as if even the sky wanted to eavesdrop. Red and blue police lights pulsed across the quiet cul-de-sac, painting the Johnson home in flashes of accusation. The neighbors, still lingering under umbrellas, craned their necks for a better view, whispering the way people do when tragedy takes on spectacle. Amara froze, the metal box still open in her hands, the flash drive glinting under the strobe of police lights. Her heart hammered like it wanted to escape her chest. She glanced back at Kendra, whose expression had hardened into disbelief mixed with fury. Two uniformed officers stepped out of the second SUV, followed by the man in the gray suit. He wasn't the kind of cop who carried himself like muscle. He moved like math, precise, calm, deliberate. His badge flashed silver against his damp coat. I'm Detective Lionel Carter, Atlanta Police Department, he said, voice low but clear. We received a call reporting possible fraud and unlawful possession of company property. Who's Amara Johnson? Heads turned toward her as though they'd been waiting for permission to accuse. Amara swallowed. I am. Carter's gaze flicked to the metal box in her hands. What's in there, ma'am? Before she could answer, Hendricks spoke up. Detective, I'm attorney Blake Hendricks, counsel for Bayview Holdings. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Mrs. Johnson is in possession of a sensitive document belonging jointly to Bayview and her late husband. No law has been broken. Connell cut in sharply. No law? She's hiding my brother's business dealings from his family. Carter raised a hand. One at a time. The van driver standing near the garage cleared his throat. Detective, with respect, I saw everything. She didn't steal nothing. They threw her stuff out. She just picked up what was hers. Carter's eyes moved to him and then back to Amara. Is that true? Amara's voice was steady, though her knees trembled. Everything they threw out was mine, including this. She lifted the box slightly. My husband left it for me. Do you have proof of that? Kendra stepped forward. His voice note, she said quickly. It's on her phone. He said everything. He said she should protect the documents and that no one else should touch them. Connell scoffed. You expect us to take a recording as proof? Anyone can make up a recording. Detective Carter's expression didn't change. Let's hear it, he said simply. Kendra handed over the phone. The voicemail played again, David's voice echoing through the garage, weary but certain. If they throw your bags into the garage, keep the envelope safe. If he doesn't mention the map, he's not the one. By the time it ended, even the rain seemed to hold its breath. Carter studied Amara a long moment, then turned to Hendricks. You did mention the map, didn't you? I did, Hendricks replied. And she just found it. He gestured to the box in Amara's hands. That's the original surveyor's map. Carter nodded slowly. All right then. Nobody's going anywhere until we verify what's what. He motioned to his partner, a younger officer named Daniels, who stepped forward with an evidence pouch. Ma'am, we'll need to take that box for safekeeping. Amara hesitated. You can't, David told me. Ma'am, Carter interrupted gently. If what you're saying is true, we'll document it properly and make sure you get protection. But if you hide it now, you could lose everything. Kendra's eyes darted between them. He said protection, Amara. Think about that. Amara's grip loosened. Her mind raced. David's last words, Connell's greed, the $500 million, the fire, the envelope. Everything felt like pieces of a puzzle that only her husband knew how to finish. With a deep breath, she handed the box to Carter. Good, he said. Now everyone step inside. Inside, the house felt heavier. The lights flickered back on, humming faintly from the backup generator. The living room was crowded with grief, suspicion, and wet footprints. Carter placed the metal box carefully on the dining table and snapped on a pair of gloves. He opened it again, removing the folded vellum. Even under artificial light, the faint anchor watermark shimmered faintly, as if painted in invisible ink. Hendricks leaned forward. That's it. That's the Bayview surveyor's sigil. Carter unfolded the map and frowned. What exactly is this worth? $500 million US, Hendricks said flatly. David Johnson acquired exclusive mineral rights to a piece of land in northern Nigeria, confirmed by satellite imaging. Bayview planned to partner with him. These are the final ownership documents. The room went silent. Marcus let out a low whistle. 500 million? For sand and stones? Connell's nostrils flared. For what should belong to our family, he said, each word a knife. David had no right to sign that alone. He had every right, Hendricks countered. He was the sole shareholder. And under Georgia law, upon his death, his assets transferred to his spouse. Auntie Tola slammed her hand on the table. We will not accept that. In our culture, the family decides what belongs to the dead. That land was meant for the lineage. Carter raised an eyebrow. With respect, ma'am, Georgia law trumps family tradition. The words hit harder than any slap. For a moment, Amara thought Connell would lunge across the table. His jaw trembled, veins stood out against his temple. But instead, he straightened his agbada, forcing a cold smile. Detective, he said smoothly, can you guarantee my brother's widow will be safe if she keeps that document? Because people in this room have seen men disappear over less. The warning wasn't subtle. Amara's blood chilled. Her eyes darted to the front window where the SUV still idled, headlights reflecting off the wet pavement. She could almost feel unseen eyes watching from the shadows. David's flash drive, if they come for you, suddenly felt prophetic. Detective, she said softly, I think my husband knew this would happen. He left something else for me. That flash drive, it must have more. Carter nodded. We'll check it at the precinct. No, Hendricks said firmly. It's confidential. Bayview property. Amara snapped, her voice slicing through the tension. My husband created it. You don't own his fear, Mr. Hendricks. Carter looked between them. Mrs. Johnson, if that drive holds information about a major transaction, we need to secure it immediately. I'll give it to you, Amara said, but not here. Not in this house. Connell laughed bitterly. You think leaving will make you safe? You've made enemies in 2 continents, Amara. Before anyone could respond, the flash drive, still on the table, blinked. What? Then again. A small LED light glowed blue, flickered, and then projected a faint image onto the table. A scanned document header reading confidential, Bayview Holdings /private agreement /trust code 27A. Everyone stared. The projection blinked again and a video feed began, grainy, timestamped 2 days before David's death. He sat at his desk, pale but determined. If you're watching this, David said, looking straight into the camera, then Bayview's legal team knows I didn't sign the full agreement. I only signed the escrow release. The mineral rights belong to Amara Johnson, my wife, and to no one else. Anyone claiming otherwise is committing fraud. I have proof. He reached off-screen and lifted a folder, the same brown envelope that had been tossed into the garage. This is the copy Bayview doesn't want anyone to see. Hendricks' face drained of color. That's impossible. We have, he stopped himself. Too late. David's recording continued. If you find this, contact Detective Lionel Carter at Atlanta PD. I've already emailed him everything. Carter's eyes widened. What? The recording ended abruptly. All eyes swung toward him. You knew? Kendra demanded. Carter started, then exhaled. He sent an encrypted email last week. It was flagged but never decrypted. I didn't know it was from him until now. Amara's hands trembled, but her face hardened. Then this was never just about a document. It's about who killed my husband. The room went still. Hendricks opened his mouth, but Carter spoke first. Mrs. Johnson, I think we need to talk privately. Whoever contacted us tonight knew exactly what would happen here. And I have a strong feeling your husband didn't die naturally. Amara blinked, shocked. You think he was murdered? Carter's eyes were grim. I think someone wanted that document, and didn't care who they had to bury to get it. Outside, the rain thinned to a whisper. In the distance, thunder rolled like slow applause, promising there was more to come. Tell us in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to help more people discover our tales. Also, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing our viewers from around the world. The air in the Johnson living room grew so heavy that even breath felt expensive. Detective Carter motioned for everyone to stay where they were as he took a slow step toward the table where the flash drive still blinked faintly blue. Amara sat stiffly, her hands knotted together on her lap. She had lost her husband, been humiliated by his family, nearly caught in a fire, and now, standing in her own house surrounded by strangers and flashing lights, she was learning he might have been murdered. Her eyes drifted to David's photograph on the wall. His wide smile, the gentle lines around his eyes, the man who had promised to protect her even in death. Carter broke the silence. Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to need that drive now. Amara hesitated, then nodded. She picked up the small black stick and placed it carefully in his gloved hand. Whatever's on it, she said, David wanted it found. Carter turned to his partner. Daniels, bag this and run a mirror copy in the van. Yes, sir. Daniels moved quickly, sealing the evidence pouch before stepping outside. Connell's voice rose behind them, bitter and controlled. Detective, we are not criminals. You walk into our family's mourning and accuse us of murder? Carter turned calmly. No one's accused anyone, yet. But your brother sent me a message before he died. He said if anything happened to him, I'd find answers in this house. That makes me very interested in what goes on here. A murmur rippled through the room. Auntie Tola clutched her wrapper closer, whispering a short prayer under her breath. Kendra folded her arms. Detective, if what David said is true, then someone wanted Amara out of the picture before they came for the money. Connell's mouth curved in a small mocking smile. You think that's me? You think I poisoned my own blood? No one answered, but the question hung like smoke. Carter studied Connell carefully. You mentioned something earlier about people disappearing over less. Care to explain that? Connell's gaze sharpened. In business, detective, not in family. My brother was dealing with powerful companies. You think those men at Bayview play clean? Hendricks stiffened. Be careful what you imply. Imply. Connell said, stepping closer. Your company wired $500 million into an offshore account before my brother even died. Where's that money now? Everyone froze. Carter's eyes narrowed. Is that true, Mr. Hendricks? Hendricks adjusted his tie. Bayview does not discuss financial details during an active investigation. That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get, Hendricks said quietly. The tension cracked like glass. Kendra's voice sliced through the silence. Detective, you need to look at that email David sent you. Now. Carter nodded. You're right. He pulled out his tablet, typed rapidly, and opened a secured police inbox. It took a few seconds before the encrypted message appeared, labeled simply from D. Johnson with the subject line, if anything happens to me. Carter's jaw tightened. Here it is. He entered his badge code and began decrypting the file. A few seconds later, the screen filled with scanned documents, one after another. A contract. A bank transfer. A series of emails between David and someone named G.M. Hendricks. Hendricks' eyes widened. That's not. Carter read aloud. Clause 12. Ownership will revert to Bayview Holdings upon the sudden or untimely death of the partner, provided no legal heir presents counterproof within 30 days. He looked up sharply. Mr. Hendricks, that clause means if Amara hadn't found this document today, Bayview would have legally owned everything by next month. Hendricks didn't speak. His silence was an answer all its own. Amara pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. David knew. He knew they'd try to take everything. Exactly, Kendra whispered. And maybe they did more than try. Carter scrolled to the bottom of the message. Attached was a photo, David in a hospital bed, eyes glassy but awake, holding the brown envelope. The timestamp was less than 12 hours before his death. A chill ran through the room. Carter looked at Hendricks again. Where were you that night? Hendricks' voice was steady but cold. In my office. I spoke to David by phone. He said he was feeling better. And after that? After that, Hendricks said, he stopped answering. Convenient, Kendra muttered. Carter pocketed the tablet. Mr. Hendricks, you'll need to come with us to answer some questions. Hendricks straightened, his professional mask slipping. Detective, if you arrest me, you'll be stepping into something much larger than you realize. Bigger than murder? Carter asked. Hendricks didn't answer. He turned toward Amara. Mrs. Johnson, he said softly, your husband was a good man, but he got involved with people he shouldn't have. If you value your life, don't trust anyone, not even the police. Before Carter could react, Hendricks reached for his coat pocket. Daniels burst back through the door, gun half drawn. Hands up. But Hendricks only pulled out a phone, and threw it to Amara. It clattered across the floor, sliding to her feet. Ask him, Hendricks said, eyes fixed on Carter. Ask your detective why David contacted him instead of internal affairs. Then, without another word, Hendricks turned toward the door and walked calmly out into the rain, straight to his SUV. The officers tried to stop him, but before they reached it, the vehicle roared to life and sped off into the night. Carter cursed under his breath. Get a trace on that vehicle. Daniels bolted outside. Amara bent and picked up the phone. The screen was cracked, rainwater dripping from its surface, but it still worked. A single video file glowed on the home screen, labeled, For Amara, Trust No One. Her fingers shook as she tapped it open. David appeared again, this time in the hospital bed, weaker, his voice a whisper. If you're watching this, Amara, then you've already seen the first message. You can't trust Bayview. And you can't trust everyone wearing a badge. I told Detective Carter because he was supposed to protect us. But if you're watching this, he failed. The room went silent. Carter's face drained of color. Kendra's eyes widened. Detective. Carter took a step forward. Let me see that. Amara stepped back. No. You explain first. What did my husband mean when he said you failed him? Carter's jaw tightened. I never met your husband in person. I was investigating a corruption case, officers leaking information to corporate clients. I think David found out. He sent me the evidence, but before I could act, someone intercepted the file. Intercepted how? I don't know. He paused, voice low. But if David was right, then someone inside Bayview, and maybe inside my department, didn't want this case to see daylight. The lights flickered again, dimming to a faint hum. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the gate. Kendra whispered, This isn't over, Amara. Amara's eyes locked on the broken phone, on the video still frozen on David's tired face. "No," she said. "It's just beginning." Carter nodded grimly. "You're coming with us. We'll put you under protective custody until we sort this out." Connell stepped forward. "And what about us?" Carter shot him a cold look. "You're staying put." But Connell's eyes were already elsewhere, on the table where the envelope and ashes of paint lay. He reached down as if steadying himself, but his hand slipped into his pocket and came out clutching a small folded paper. A flash of blue ink. The symbol of an anchor. Kendra gasped. "He has another copy." Connell bolted toward the back door. Daniels shouted from outside, "Hey! Stop him!" Carter barked, lunging forward. Connell tore out into the rain, the paper clutched to his chest, disappearing into the dark with headlights flaring after him. The last thing Amara heard before the door slammed was Carter's voice, sharp as thunder. "Don't let him leave the street, he's holding the rest of the map." And just like that, grief turned into a hunt. Rain hammered the street like 1,000 tiny fists as Connell sprinted through the cul-de-sac, his soaked Igbata clinging to his legs. The paper with the blue anchor symbol, what everyone now knew was the other half of the $500 million map, was squeezed so tightly in his fist that the ink bled into his palm. Behind him, Detective Carter's voice roared over the storm. "Stop. Connell Adeoye, stop right now." But Connell didn't stop. He darted between parked cars, slipping on the wet pavement before catching his balance against a mailbox. His breath came in shallow bursts, part panic, part purpose. He knew what that paper meant. It was the key to David's secret fortune, and whoever had the full map had control of the mineral rights. He wasn't going to let Amara, the outsider, take everything. Not after the years of feeling like his brother had abandoned his family. Not after David had married that city girl, who barely spoke their language. Carter and Officer Daniels tore after him, flashlights cutting streaks through the rain. "Fan out." Carter barked. "He heads toward the woodline, we lose him." Inside the house, Amara watched from the doorway, her heart in her throat. The cold wind slapped her face but she didn't care. "He took the map," she cried. Kendra grabbed her arm. "Amara, don't. Let them handle it." But Amara pulled away. "You don't understand, Kendra. That's David's work. His life's work." She stepped into the rain barefoot, her black dress heavy and clinging. Her eyes were fixed on the streaks of light moving down the street. Behind her, Auntie Tola murmured a low prayer, torn between fear and fury. Out by the cul-de-sac, Connell reached the back gate of a neighbor's yard. He shoved it open and stumbled through, cutting across a patch of tall grass toward the woods. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his face, desperate, wild, not the proud man from the burial hours ago. "Connell?" Carter's shout echoed closer now. "Don't make this worse for yourself." Connell looked over his shoulder just as his foot caught on a tree root. He crashed hard into the mud, the paper slipping from his hand and landing inches away in a shallow puddle. His eyes widened in horror as the ink began to run. He lunged forward, scooping it up, pressing it against his chest. Carter closed in, gun drawn but lowered. "Don't move. I'm not a thief." Connell shouted back, voice breaking. "This belongs to my bloodline. Not to her. You think I'd kill my brother for money?" Carter's voice softened. "Then stop running." Connell hesitated, chest heaving. "He promised me we'd share everything. But then he met her. After that he stopped calling. Stopped helping." Amara appeared at the gate, soaked and trembling. "Connell," she called, voice cracking. "Please. David never stopped loving you. He was trying to save all of us." Connell's head snapped toward her. "Save us? He left me with debts and silence. You got the house, the money, and now you want this too." Amara took a cautious step closer, her bare feet sinking into the mud. "You think I wanted this? I lost him, Connell. Everything I have left is what he left behind, for both of us." Carter motioned discreetly to Daniels, who circled around behind Connell. But before they could close in, a pair of headlights flared from the far side of the woods. A black SUV. The same model Hendricks had used. Connell turned instinctively toward the light. "They're here for me?" "No." Carter barked. "Step away, Connell. Don't go near that car." But it was too late. The passenger door opened, and a voice called through the rain, smooth and commanding. "Mr. Adeoye, get in the car. We'll make sure you get what's yours." "Hendricks." Connell hesitated for half a second, and then bolted toward the SUV. Carter shouted, "Don't." The shot came out of nowhere. A single thunderclap of sound that wasn't thunder. Connell stopped mid-run, his body jerking once before crumpling to the mud. No! Amara screamed. Carter dropped to one knee, drawing his weapon. Sniper! Daniels yelled, scanning the treeline. The SUV's headlights cut off instantly, and the vehicle reversed hard, tires spinning in the wet grass before vanishing down the side road. Carter ran to Connell's body, checking for a pulse. Nothing. His shirt was already soaked with blood. Amara fell to her knees beside him, shaking. He didn't deserve this. He just wanted to be seen. Carter exhaled slowly. Whoever fired that shot didn't want him talking. Hendricks isn't working alone. Kendra caught up moments later, panting and clutching her phone. The police are on their way, she said breathlessly. I saw the car's plate before it turned. I got the last 3 digits, 9F2. Good, Carter said, standing. We'll need it. He glanced back at Connell's lifeless hand, still clenched around the soggy paper. Gently he pried it open. The ink was nearly gone, but faint traces of blue remained, an anchor and part of a signature. Get this bagged, he told Daniels. Every drop of it. Daniels nodded grimly. Amara stared at Connell's face, rain washing streaks of mud from his skin. He didn't even know the truth. What truth? Kendra asked softly. Amara blinked through tears. David told me once that if anything ever happened to him, it wouldn't just be about money. He said there were people inside Bayview who had used fake identities to funnel dirty contracts through Africa. He wanted to expose them. Carter's gaze darkened. That explains the email. And the drive. He was about to blow the whistle. And they silenced him, Kendra whispered. Carter turned toward the road where Hendricks' SUV had vanished. And they just killed the only person who could prove their connection to the land. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, slicing through the storm. Blue lights reflected off the wet leaves. Amara rose slowly, her voice shaking but sure. If David risked his life to uncover this, then I'm not stopping now. We finish what he started. Carter studied her for a long moment. That means trusting me completely. You ready for that? Amara looked toward Connell's body, then at the house where her life had collapsed in one night. I don't have a choice anymore, she said. But I'm not hiding behind anyone. Good, Carter replied, pulling a card from his pocket and handing it to Kendra. You two pack what you need. We move to a safe location tonight. Hendricks won't stop here. Kendra nodded, her expression hardening. And what about Connell? Carter glanced toward the arriving cruisers. He deserves the truth too. And we'll make sure he gets it. As the officers spread out to secure the scene, Amara turned once more toward the darkness beyond the trees. The SUV was long gone, but its shadow still lingered, a reminder that $500 million had drawn blood, and the real enemy hadn't even shown their face yet. Lightning flashed, illuminating the street for an instant. Amara's silhouette stood framed against the glow, barefoot, soaked but unbroken. David, she whispered to the rain, I found the map. Now I'll find the truth. And in the far distance, the faint echo of another engine rumbled to life as if someone somewhere had heard her vow. The night had collapsed into silence by the time Amara, Kendra, and Detective Carter reached the safe house. A modest one-story brick home on the outskirts of Atlanta, tucked behind an old church and half swallowed by vines. Rain still drizzled from the eaves, tapping against the windows like fingers refusing to let go. Inside, the place smelled faintly of cedar and disinfectant. There were no personal touches, no family photos, just bare walls, a couch, a small kitchen table, and a single lamp. Daniel stood by the door, his uniform damp, his face drawn. Carter locked the door behind them and turned to Amara. You'll stay here until we sort this out. No calls, no visitors, no stepping outside alone. Understand? Amara nodded silently, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched tea. Kendra sat beside her, glancing warily at the curtained window. Do they know we're here? Only me and Daniels, Carter said. And the captain maybe. But if Hendricks has eyes inside the department, we have to assume they're already looking. Amara's eyes lifted to him. You think they'll come after me? Carter didn't answer right away. Instead, he set a small metal case on the table and opened it. Inside were 2 USB drives and a secure laptop. Before Connell ran, we managed to copy the flash drive you gave me. There's more on it than just contracts. There are video recordings, encrypted emails, and financial transfers linked to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Kendra leaned forward. So David really was exposing them. Carter nodded. Yes. And he was close to something big. According to this file here, he opened one document and turned the screen toward them. He found evidence that Bayview Holdings has been funneling stolen oil profits from Nigeria into shell companies registered in the U.S. under fake church charities. Kendra's eyes widened. Church charities? Yeah, Carter said. They laundered millions through missions and donations. And from what I can tell, your husband stumbled on proof that tied their CEO directly to it. He was planning to leak it through an international watchdog. Amara's voice cracked. He told me he was working on something that could change lives. I thought he meant our lives. Kendra squeezed her hand. He meant everyone's. Amara. Daniels, who had been quiet, spoke for the first time. Sir, if Bayview's involved with organized crime, Hendricks isn't the top. Someone higher up pulled that trigger tonight. Carter nodded grimly. Exactly. Hendricks is the handler, not the mastermind. We need the full recording your husband mentioned in his message, the one stored on that missing map. Amara frowned. But the map was destroyed in the rain. Not completely, Carter said. Forensic techs recovered part of the signature and the ink pattern from Connell's hand. If we cross-match it with Bayview's survey records, we can trace who originally signed the document. He turned to Daniels. Get that sample to the lab. Quietly. No reports through the main system. I want this off the grid. Yes, sir. Daniels saluted slightly and left through the back door. The room felt smaller after he was gone. Amara looked around, her mind a storm of grief and exhaustion. She wanted to lie down to let everything wash over her, but she could still hear Connell's last words echoing in her head. You got the house, the money, and now you want this too. She shook her head. He died thinking I took everything from him. Carter sighed. He died trying to hold on to something that wasn't his to carry. But he gave us proof. His death won't be in vain. A soft knock rattled the door. Everyone froze. Carter pulled his gun silently and motioned Amara and Kendra to stay back. He checked the peephole, frowning. It's Daniels. He opened the door, but the man standing there wasn't Daniels. The stranger wore Daniels' jacket, but his face was wrong. Narrower, older, with a thin scar running from his jaw to his ear. He smiled slightly. Detective Carter. I'm sorry to interrupt your evening. Carter didn't hesitate. Step inside, slowly. The man obeyed, hands visible, but his tone was calm, almost casual. You've made a very dangerous mistake, detective. That woman you're protecting, she's holding evidence that doesn't belong to her. Kendra stepped protectively in front of Amara. Who are you? The man's smile widened. Someone who works for people far richer than you can imagine. People who don't like losing $500 million. Carter moved closer, gun steady. You've got 5 seconds to tell me where Officer Daniels is. The man's eyes flickered, and for a heartbeat, Amara thought she saw something like regret there. Then he said simply, sleeping? Carter lunged forward, grabbing the man by the collar and slamming him against the wall. What did you do to him? But the stranger only grinned, producing a small black device from his pocket. A detonator, its red light blinking slowly. Enough, he said. You don't want this to end badly. Kendra gasped. Oh God. Carter's grip tightened. If you've wired this house. The man cut him off with a calm shrug. Not the house. The car outside. They all froze. Step back from me, he continued smoothly. Give me the flash drive, and I'll make sure the explosion doesn't reach the propane line. You'll all walk away alive. Amara's heart pounded. Her mind flashed to David again, his warning, his voice whispering if they come for you. She met Carter's eyes. We can't give it to him. Carter gave a faint, grim nod. I know. Then in one motion he kicked the man's wrist, sending the detonator flying. It clattered across the floor and under the table. Kendra screamed. The man lunged, but Carter was faster. He slammed him down, wrenching the gun from his belt. Amara, get it? Carter shouted. Amara dropped to her knees and snatched the detonator. Its red light blinked faster now. It's armed. Throw it outside. Carter yelled. Without thinking, Amara hurled it through the open window. A single heartbeat later, a deafening boom tore through the quiet night. The ground shook, the windows shattered inward, and flames lit up the sky where the car had been. They all hit the floor. The stranger groaned, trying to crawl toward the door. Carter pinned him with a knee to the back and yanked his arms behind him. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, the man hissed. Yeah, Carter said, cuffing him. You first. Kendra pushed herself upright, glass in her hair, eyes wide with disbelief. That was meant for us. Amara's voice trembled. They know where we are. We're not safe here. Carter nodded, wiping blood from his forehead. You're right. We move now, before they send another team. As he dragged the cuffed man toward the door, the stranger laughed softly. You can run all you want, detective. But you can't hide her forever. The people I work for, they already know her name. Amara's blood ran cold. Who are they? She demanded. Who sent you? The man smiled one last time. Ask the board of Bayview Holdings. And then, before Carter could stop him, the man jerked forward violently, his head snapping back at an unnatural angle. A small hiss of smoke rose from his neck. Sniper! Carter shouted, diving down. Kendra screamed as the front window shattered again, one perfect hole where the bullet had entered. Carter pulled Amara to the floor, his voice a harsh whisper. They just silenced their own man. Outside, distant tires screeched. Whoever had fired the shot was already gone. Amara's heart thudded painfully against her ribs. They'll never stop. Carter looked her dead in the eye. Then neither will we. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a phone wrapped in foil. I've got one contact left who might help us. But we'll have to leave Georgia, tonight. Kendra swallowed hard. Where? Carter's voice dropped to a whisper. Nigeria. That's where it started. And where it'll end. Thunder rolled in the distance again, long and low, as if the heavens themselves had heard the vow. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next shocking part of this story. The flight to Lagos was long and tense. They traveled under false names, Carter as Mr. Harris, Kendra as Grace, and Amara as Mrs. Adebayo. The plane trembled through clouds, and though the engines hummed steady, Amara's heart did not. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Cunnell's body in the mud, Hendrik's cold smile, and David's final words echoing in her mind. If they come for you. Carter sat by the window, his face half lit by the cabin lights. He hadn't said much since they left Atlanta. He looked like a man haunted by too many half-solved cases. Amara watched him, trying to decide if she truly trusted him, or if she simply had no choice. When the plane touched down at Murtala Muhammad Airport, the air felt heavier, warmer, thicker, alive with the scent of fuel, dust, and fried plantains drifting from nearby stalls. Nigeria. David's birthplace. The land that held his beginnings and, now, his secrets. They cleared immigration with fake documents Carter's contact had arranged. Outside, the noise was overwhelming, hawkers shouting, taxis honking, the chaos of a city that never slept. A black Toyota SUV waited at the curb. The driver was a tall man in a plain suit and sunglasses, despite the dim sky. Carter greeted him with a nod. This is Inspector Chike Nwosu, my liaison from Interpol. Chike shook Amara's hand firmly. Madam Johnson, we've been expecting you. I've been briefed. Your husband was a brave man. Too brave for the men he crossed. Amara felt a lump rise in her throat. You knew him? Chike nodded once. Not personally. But his name reached the right ears. He was feeding data to an international task force tracking oil corruption. That flash drive you have, it's the missing piece. Kendra frowned. So you believe Bayview Holdings is laundering stolen oil profits through Shell charities? Believe. Chike said grimly. We've been chasing them for years. Bayview isn't alone. It's part of a global syndicate, politicians, bankers, businessmen. And here in Lagos they're protected by power. Carter added quietly, that's why we're not going to the station. We can't trust the local police. We go to a private safe house first. They drove through the city as rain began to fall again, thin sheets glittering against streetlights. Lagos at night was a collage of contradictions. Gleaming towers beside crumbling tenements, the laughter of street vendors cutting through the hiss of rain. Amara stared out the window, her reflection ghost-like against the glass. David grew up here, she said softly. He told me his dreams started in Lagos traffic. He used to sell recharge cards by the roadside. He always said, one day I'll own the land the rich drive over. Carter glanced at her. And he did. Then they killed him for it, she whispered. They reached the safe house near Lekki, a discreet bungalow behind high walls. Inside, Chike unlocked a reinforced briefcase and placed it on the table. This, he said, is everything we have on Bayview's Nigerian operations. Offshore ledgers, fake NGOs, and a list of names your husband identified. But the final proof is hidden in one of their Lagos offices, a vault in Bayview's regional headquarters. Kendra's eyes widened. You mean we have to break in? Carter nodded. We can't subpoena them from here. The minute we file paperwork, they'll burn everything. The only option is to get that data before they move it. Amara straightened. Then we do it. Kendra turned to her, shocked. Amara, you can't be serious. These people murdered your husband and blew up a safe house. This isn't your fight anymore. Amara's voice was steady. It was never just David's fight. It's mine now. He died trying to give people their land back. If I stop now, everything he did dies with him. The room fell silent. Even Carter looked at her differently, as though seeing the steel beneath her sorrow. Chike cleared his throat. Then we go at dawn. Their security rotation changes every 6 hours. If we get in before 5 a.m., we'll have 15 minutes before the next shift. Carter nodded. We'll need disguises, access cards, and a clean exit route. I'll handle logistics. You, he said to Kendra, stay with Amara and keep that drive safe. Kendra frowned. You're not going alone. I'm not, Carter said. Chike's coming with me. Amara stepped forward. So am I. No, Carter said sharply. This isn't a debate. But Amara's tone was quiet and final. You said David trusted me. Then trust me too. I know how he thinks, where he hides things. If he left something there, I'll find it faster than anyone. For a moment, Carter stared at her, torn between duty and understanding. Finally he sighed. Fine. But you follow every word I say. I will, she promised. Early morning, Bayview Holdings, Lagos headquarters. The building was a monolith of glass and steel, its surface gleaming like a blade. Security cameras blinked at every corner. Amara, dressed in a borrowed security uniform, kept her head down as Carter and Chike walked beside her, pretending to escort her as a maintenance worker. Stay close, Carter murmured. Once we're inside, no talking unless I signal. The lobby was empty except for 2 guards at the far end. They barely glanced up as the trio passed, distracted by a football match playing on a mounted TV. The elevator doors slid open silently. Chike punched in a code. Basement level 3, he whispered. That's where they keep the private servers. The elevator descended with a soft hum. Amara's heartbeat matched its rhythm. When the doors opened again, the hallway ahead glowed with sterile white light and the faint buzz of machinery. Carter checked the corner camera. Looping feed. We've got 6 minutes. They moved swiftly down the corridor, stopping before a heavy steel door marked restricted access. Chike produced a stolen access card, swiped it, and entered another code. The lock clicked open. Inside was a server room, cold, humming, filled with blinking lights. Rows of machines whispered secrets. Carter moved to the nearest terminal and inserted a small flash tool. Uploading decryption key, he muttered. We'll copy their ledgers directly. Amara's eyes scanned the rows of drives. One stood out, a black casing labeled DJ Contract Archive. Her breath caught. David's initials, she whispered. Carter turned. What? She pointed. That's his work. He must have stored his version here. Chike frowned. Impossible. Only Bayview staff have access. David was Bayview staff, Amara said quietly. Until they killed him. She stepped forward, slipped the drive from its slot, and handed it to Carter. This is what he wanted found. Before he could respond, the overhead lights flickered, and then went red. Security breach detected, a female voice announced through the speakers. All personnel remain in position. Carter cursed. They tripped an alarm. Chike yanked his gun free. Backup's coming. Footsteps thundered above them. Amara clutched the drive to her chest. We can't leave without this. Carter grabbed her arm. We're not leaving it behind, we're leaving with it. They bolted down the corridor toward the service exit. The alarm blared louder. 2 guards appeared at the end of the hall, rifles raised. Down? Carter shouted. He fired 2 quick shots, hitting the wall beside them, forcing them to duck. Chike returned fire, dropping one of the men. Go! Chike yelled. Get her out. Amara turned, eyes wide. No, we go together. But Carter pulled her through the door. He'll catch up. They burst into the service tunnel, sirens echoing behind them. The morning light was just beginning to touch the skyline. As they ran toward the waiting car, Amara looked back one last time, and saw Chike collapse in the doorway, clutching his shoulder as more guards swarmed in. Chike, she screamed. Carter yanked her into the car. We can't go back. The tires screeched as they sped away from the building, bullets pinging against the metal. The drive in Amara's hand felt like fire. She turned to Carter, voice trembling. They'll kill him. He knew the risk, Carter said, jaw tight. Now we make it worth it. Amara looked out at the city rushing past, the rising sun, the chaos, the ghosts of everyone she'd lost. They won't stop until they bury this truth, she said quietly. Carter nodded. Then we don't let them. Tell us in the comments below. And remember to subscribe, like, and share this story if you believe truth is worth fighting for. The sun was barely awake over Lagos when the city's skyline began to shimmer in orange and gold. But inside a rundown warehouse near Ape, there was no light, only the glow of a single laptop screen and the heavy sound of breathing. Amara sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, still wearing the Bayview uniform, her eyes fixed on the flash drive in front of her. Carter paced a few feet away, his phone pressed to his ear, whispering into the secure line. Every few seconds his gaze flicked to the door. Interpol's backup is delayed, he muttered. Chike's alive, but they've taken him into custody. Bayview filed charges against him for espionage. Amara's heart sank. They'll kill him before he talks. I know, Carter said quietly. That's why we need to release everything now. He set the laptop between them, its cracked screen flickering as the system decrypted the files David had hidden. Each document that appeared made Amara's breath catch. Bank transfers, coded contracts, scanned signatures. Her husband's meticulous handwriting appeared on the final folder, labeled in capital letters, The Truth. She clicked it open. Dozens of files filled the screen, videos, letters, contracts, all tying Bayview Holdings to a massive web of oil theft, human trafficking, and money laundering through fake charities. Even government officials, Nigerian, American, European, were on the payroll. Kendra leaned closer, covering her mouth. This isn't just corruption. This is an empire. Amara scrolled through the documents with shaking fingers. David risked everything to get this. Carter nodded grimly. And they killed him to bury it. Suddenly the laptop beeped. A new message flashed across the screen. Incoming transmission. Bayview server. Carter froze. They found us. The laptop camera light blinked on by itself. For a moment the image flickered, then stabilized into the face of Gregory Hendricks, the same attorney who had vanished after Connell's death. He was in an office, calm, almost smiling. Mrs. Johnson, he said smoothly. I must admit you're more resourceful than I expected. Lagos suits you. Amara's eyes burned with rage. You murdered my husband. He tilted his head. Murder is such an ugly word. Your husband made a choice, he tried to expose men whose reach you cannot comprehend. Now you're standing where he stood. I'm offering you a chance to live. Kendra scoffed. By giving you the drive? Exactly. Hendricks leaned forward, his face too close to the camera. Hand over the drive. Walk away. We'll let you leave Nigeria alive. Carter stepped in front of the screen. And if she doesn't? Then her next flight home will be in a coffin, Hendricks replied, still smiling. You can't stop us, detective. You're a small man in a system we built. Amara's hand moved to the touchpad. She dragged the cursor to the file marked Final Evidence, Play First. Do you know what's inside this file, Mr. Hendricks? She asked, voice low. Hendricks hesitated. You wouldn't dare release it. She clicked. The screen changed, grainy surveillance footage appeared. It showed Hendricks himself, sitting in a conference room, laughing with two men in military uniforms. The subtitles scrolled across. The minister's cut goes to Cayman. The widow signs nothing and we liquidate the assets quietly. Hendricks froze. His smug expression cracked. How did you? Amara didn't let him finish. She turned the laptop toward Carter. Can we broadcast it? He nodded. Yes, but once I hit send, every corrupt official connected to Bayview will know we're the ones who did it. Then send it, Amara said. Let the whole world see who they really are. Carter typed furiously, linking the files to Interpol, BBC Africa, and every major international media outlet. The screen blinked once, twice, then displayed the confirmation, upload complete. Kendra exhaled shakily. It's done. Hendricks' face darkened. You foolish woman. You've just declared war on people who never lose. The connection cut off. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then, somewhere outside, the sound of engines filled the air, SUVs again, many of them tires crushing gravel. They're here, Carter said. He closed the laptop, grabbed Amara's arm and pulled her toward the back exit. We go now. Gunfire shattered the front windows before the door even opened. The echo filled the warehouse. Bullets ripped through crates. Kendra ducked low, crawling toward the rear wall. This way, she shouted, kicking open a side hatch. They ran. The narrow alley behind the warehouse led to the lagoon, where a single motorboat bobbed near the pier. Carter fired twice behind them, covering their retreat. One of the SUVs skidded to a halt, men spilling out, shouting in both English and Yoruba. Move! Carter barked. Amara stumbled into the boat as Kendra pushed off, the motor sputtering to life. The water churned as bullets hit the surface like angry raindrops. Carter leapt aboard just as a bullet tore through his coat. Go! The boat shot forward, bouncing against waves. The skyline of Lagos shimmered behind them, lit with the glow of chaos. Amara clutched the laptop to her chest. What now? Carter grinned grimly. Now. We let the truth do its work. Behind them, smoke began to rise from the Bayview building, their data servers self-destructing. But it was too late. Across the world, media outlets were already publishing the leak. Headlines appeared within minutes. Bayview Holdings exposed in global oil scandal. International whistleblower's widow releases explosive evidence. Hendricks' empire began to crumble in real time. Hours later, they reached the edge of a quiet coastal village. Fishermen stared as the strangers stepped off the boat, soaked and shaking. Carter's phone buzzed, an encrypted message from Interpol. He read it aloud. Operation Bayview shut down. Multiple arrests. Hendricks missing. Amara sank to her knees, tears streaming freely at last. The weight of 2 years, 2 funerals and $500 million worth of secrets lifted from her shoulders. Kendra knelt beside her. You did it, Amara. David would be proud. Amara smiled weakly through her tears. No, she said softly. We did it. Carter holstered his weapon, watching the horizon where the sun began to rise. You know they'll still come looking. The men behind Hendricks, the ones who haven't fallen yet, they'll want revenge. Amara looked at him, her eyes no longer afraid. Then they'll find a widow who isn't running anymore. A long silence fell between them, broken only by the call of distant gulls and the hum of the waking ocean. Carter offered his hand. Where to next? Amara looked toward the village, where a group of children laughed barefoot on the sand, their future still unscarred by greed or grief. Home, she said simply. Wherever that means now. Carter nodded. Then let's get you there. As they walked away, the camera of the imaginary world panned upward, past the coastline, the boat drifting at anchor, and the sun spilling gold across the sea. And for the first time since David's death, Amara smiled. A small, fragile smile that carried both victory and loss. Because she knew that even though her husband was gone, his truth was alive, rippling through the world like waves that could not be stopped. Tell us in the comments below, and if this story gripped your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful African folktale dramas.